Hey guys, I'm back once again with another set of videos just about some RPG horror stories. I have some other stuff coming up, including a mini talk / rant about the Elon Hasbro situation that people have been talking about, and that will all be coming next week, so look forward to that. But in the meantime, let's get straight into this series of stories, starting with Oath of Vengeance, Run Amok. So, not too horrific of a story, but it did lead to me and possibly others leaving the group. I joined a in-person D&D game back in March 2024. I was a very experienced player. I've been a DM for years. Most of the other players were newish, with one or two people who had a little under their belt. DM had some experience with his buddies growing up, but never played in someone else's campaign, I believe, and never played an official adventure. He was a big Critical Role fan, to the point of posters, merch, all that jazz. I mentioned all of this to you, dear reader, to know that he, the DM, may have somewhat of a skewed idea of what D&D 5e is. We didn't have a real Session 0, just a couple of posts in Discord. I should have run then, as that's a classic red flag, right? No Session 0. I mean, personally, I'd interject here just to say that, yeah, it's not the best to not have a Session 0, but I don't think it's an immediate red flag. I've been in a couple of games where there wasn't really a Session 0 per se, but people talked in the Discord, they talked about what they expected coming up, what they were excited for. There were posts that detailed how the game was going to go, here were the rules, here's the setting and such. You can still talk to the DM and talk to the players. There just wasn't a time where everyone gathered together to stress their issues and what they were expecting going forward. It was more of a collective discussion. So, yeah, not having a Session 0, it can be bad, but I don't think it's an immediate cut everything off and don't do the game. We all make characters, 6 people. We had a druid, a fighter, a sorcerer, a ranger, later replaced by a bard, a paladin, and me, a wizard. So the paladin was a newbie, knew some D&D from video games like BG3, but had no actual experience playing. This is important to remember for later in the story. He goes, Oath of Vengeance. This dude is one of those folks who's always really seems to be somewhat angry about something, job, the world, whatever. First few sessions go well. The DM really impressed me, to be honest. His plot and story were honestly pretty crap. We all were told to go and get this MacGuffin, that this is just a small chest that expels the smoke from the D&D movie. Yes, he was stealing the plot of the D&D movie for this, but he was very good at the role-playing, immersion, rules, knowledge, so I'm all like, yeah, I can give this a shot. His lore knowledge was pretty low, but it was kind of a homebrew, so that's fine. Just annoying. For example, he had been using the red wizards as the big bars, yet makes them all women, like in the movie, and calls them the red witches. I asked if he meant the red wizards, the ones from Fae, and he was like, yeah, but they're women, so they're witches. Dude, this isn't Harry Potter. Wizard is a gender-neutral term here, but no biggie. I mean, I'm sure this was perhaps worded better in the actual sessions, but so far, OP, you're kind of coming off a little bad. You're saying these players don't have actual experience of playing, this is maybe some of their first experienced games, and you're just critiquing everything? All DMs tend to just steal stuff for their plot. They take different aspects and they run it their own way. It's not every game that ends up with a totally original scenario. Writers copy stuff, that's just how it is. You're saying they're good at everything else, but then this nonsense with the red wizards, red witches, you know what they were saying, so just let it go. They're apparently not proficient in the lore, but they're making a fun game, so, I don't get what the big deal is here. It's whatever, you even say it's no biggie. Why go on about it? But that's just me. I find this kind of obnoxious, but we'll see. The problem is the paladin. He has decided that Oath of Vengeance means anything goes, for even the slightest transgression. He regularly insists on torturing or attempting to torture enemies, and this isn't just, hey, I torture them, make a roll, works, doesn't work. He wants to describe what he does, breaking hands and fingers, etc. Now this kind of makes me uncomfortable. I really am not looking for torture reenactments in my fantasy RPG. I want classic good guys saving people, fighting evil stuff, which is what I was led to believe the campaign was. The paladin spends the next 2 sessions, and every time we capture someone, which he insists on all the time, bitching about my character being no fun, because he won't endorse the torture of captives. I explained to him then that my character is very good aligned and wouldn't support anything like that. He does this in character, but he also does it out of character. No correction of behaviour, no comment at all from the DM. The Paladin player is one of those folks who constantly talk smack to some people for whatever reason, like, I'm older than a lot of the other players, and they bring that up all the time. Another player is bald, and every time someone mentions hair, he has to make a comment about how that player wouldn't know, that sort of thing. He also constantly has to be the centre of attention whenever someone else has something going on, but he is always trying to insert himself into the situation. So I, like most of the folks in the group, despite my misgivings, I stay. I figure that DM just needs some more experience, and maybe the Pally can chill eventually. So this here is probably the moment where we are seeing the lack of experience come out in both players and DM, as I think there is some room here. Some people in their RPGs want to do dark settings and stuff, having the Oath of Vengeance Paladin come in and say, no matter what, I will get the vengeance. If that means torturing, breaking bones and such, then that's what it will mean. I don't think that is inherently bad. I don't think that they're playing their character necessarily wrong, but the issue is here that you want to play a different campaign from what this player wants to play. Now, yes, they also seem to be a bit of a dick as well. They're just generally rude out of character, but that doesn't change the in-character. The issue here is you have a problem with it, and it doesn't align with what you expected the campaign to be, so here you should speak to the DM. There should be a point to speak to the DM and say, this makes me uncomfortable. Could you talk to the Paladin, and you also as well talk to the Paladin to say, I don't mind you doing this, or maybe I don't mind you mentioning this, but I don't want descriptions of what you were doing, please. I understand that maybe that damages your roleplay somewhat, but it's making me generally uncomfortable and I don't feel like I want to stay in the game. Here, a good DM and a good player would acknowledge that. It might make the Paladin feel a bit, well, that's an aspect of my character I wanted to play, but okay, they want it to be a bit darker. However, for the other player, they may be willing to make a moment of, okay, I can't do this all the time, I understand, but DM, could we have a session where there is a dark moment of my Paladin, where something terrible has happened and my Paladin gets to have that one moment, and would you be okay with that? There is give and there is take. I don't think that anyone here really is experienced enough to understand how to do that. I think that also this Paladin is just not that type of person. They seem like the kind of person who's just going to go on a rant and fight you for every inch that they want. Still, again, you acknowledge this, you're still in the campaign, hopefully the DM will get better, maybe this situation will resolve. It's early days yet. Let's see how it goes. Meanwhile, as we get to 5th level, we've received less than 200 GP per person for the entire campaign, and no magic items. Kind of frustrating when you play a wizard, since I can't copy spells if I have no money. Cut to the last session, and the sorcerer in our group is Divine Soul, and has this kind of cool story going on about whether they can redeem themselves through a past horrific action. He's been told to keep an eye out for a certain symbol, and if he sees it, to follow it. He sees it. We follow. 3 city guards were chasing a fugitive, and they've trapped him in a tree, and we're trying to talk him down. Figuring this is an RP scene for the sorcerer, most of us take a backseat and let him take the lead, since this is his whole thing. But oh, not our Pally. No sir. He has gone 10 to 15 minutes without doing stuff. Guess what else we did during this session? If you said capture and interrogate an enemy, you win the prize, because it is all we ever do. This is unacceptable to him. So our Pally says, DM, can I move around so I can line these guys up? Sure, says the DM. He then uses his breath weapon on them. These guards had committed no violence, did not even have weapons drawn. Our sorcerer had passed some insight checks and knew they weren't chasing the fugitive legitimately. It was a guard abusing their authority to lock up a rival for a woman's love. Kind of neat. But our sorcerer had not communicated this to the rest of us, who were content to be his backup and let him do his thing. So 3 guards, who, as far as the rest of us have known, have done nothing wrong, are pursuing their rightful duty, and as soon as the Pally announces his attack, some chaos is at the table. I inform him that he's 2 seconds away from me attacking him, and he demands to know why. I reply, because you're attempting to murder 3 officers of the law who have taken no offence to actions against anyone here, and my character is strongly good aligned. Now he replies, vengeance Pallys don't have to be good aligned. Agreed, and can do whatever they want in the pursuit of justice. I point out that the guards have done nothing wrong, as far as any of us knew, So how is this related to him making a vengeance oath because a dragon had killed his family? He said it didn't have to be. Session ended shortly after, and the DM said nothing about the Pally's actions. I'm a bit surprised here, as I'd have been having a conversation with the Pally in my own campaign about possible oathbreaker status if they keep harming innocent people who have done nothing with your oath whatsoever. I decide I'm kinda done. I wanted to be a hero, not indulge the Pally in his torture, violence, look at me antics. Later, at a one-shot a player is running, the argument comes up again. The Pally again quotes the PHP tenant about any means necessary and not needing to be good. Now, I'd been kind of pulling my super nerdy lore punches with him and the DM, but I'd had enough at this point, so after 6 months of this crap, I just go off. Cite multiple quotes from the PHP about all Paladins fighting evil, quotes from the class about being neutral or lawful neutral, and that those are not the kind of let me murder some guards for fun type of people. Quotes comparing the class to Batman. They don't care. The DM tells me it is up to the player, and I remind him that he is the DM, and if the Pally is an oathbreaker, that is his call. Crickets. So, long story short, if you spot red flags early and your DM lets them go, you may want to jump ship and find a better game. Which, silver lining, I did. Me and a couple of people from the prior group have started our own thing that's going great. Torture free. Thanks for reading my rant, everyone. So, there are two issues here, I feel, and they're completely different. One, obviously the Paladin is a difficult person to play with, and I don't think that they are suitable for this group. They are someone who clearly just wants all the attention, they want it all on them, and they are kind of being a bit dramatic. Yes, they want to go full anti-hero, I'm doing all of this to the pursuit of justice in my own means. They're not good. And I can say that there is a way to run that character in an acceptable fashion. Now, doing that on occasion, I think is fine. There is a party dynamic, you have clashes, you have roleplay, you try to kind of meet in the middle. This Paladin is not doing that. This Paladin is walking into someone else's scene, or presumably someone else's scene, and just fire breathing it to start complete combat in the way that they want, to take all the agency from the sorcerer and bring it back to them. But in this, the issue doesn't necessarily become the Paladin. The Paladin is problematic, they're annoying, they are out of character, they're just kind of irritating. The issue here is, what is the DM doing? Because this is really a situation where the DM needs to be involved. Even at the end of the session, the DM should be stating, hey, this is, this went wrong, this really should have been more of the sorcerer's deal, Paladin, you should back off. Maybe you're leaning towards becoming an oathbreaker, or, you're leaning towards changing your alignment. This is a situation where the DM has just kind of sat back for the ride and letting things happen. And I understand that sometimes as a DM, you don't want to railroad people. You don't want to come in and say, don't do that, and you smack the toys out their hand. Sure. It's an issue that every DM has to battle with, and I understand why they are maybe, with the lack of experience, having some issue there. But they're ruining their own game. Now, I'm going to say on the other hand, the OP in this does not come off well. I understand what they want. They want a completely different game to what is being run, and this is a case of they should just leave. They should, as they did, take the players who want their kind of game and who are frustrated and go run a different game. And thankfully, that is what they do. However, the final act of this, going on about their lore dump, their smash into the DM with this quote and that quote and this, it doesn't come off in your favour. You just kind of come off as someone annoying, and I don't think I would want to play a game with you. I think you're probably really fun to play with, but having seen this might slightly put me off, because again, you go on about this and that, and they're played like this, and at the end, you remind the DM that it's essentially up to the DM. The DM makes all the decisions. We know that if you read the handbooks, the guides, everything, it's always about the DM has final say. I've said this in every video, the DM has final say. That's just how it is. They run the game. The DM decides if the Paladin is an oathbreaker, and you then kind of expect some grand, oh, you're so right, OP. You've told us all of these quotes. I'll do it now. That isn't how it's going to work, and this outburst that you've done kind of paints you in a poor light. Yes, you probably should have had a couple of talks to the DM throughout this and this one-shot DM to give some advice. Give, hey, maybe they're going over the line a little. There's this issue, there's that. These things should change. But this outburst is just... it's a bit much, and ultimately this kind of ends up ending like a everyone sucks here kind of story. I don't think the DM is particularly great. I don't think they're terrible either. I think they're running a decent game and trying to learn, and they just unfortunately have a bad player in their game. They should be more concrete with the Paladin. I don't think the Paladin is completely lost as a figure yet, because there hasn't been enough in it really to me to say that they're terrible. Yeah, they make some just crass jokes, they're a bit annoying out of character, but in character I don't think that wanting to play a dark character is necessarily bad. However, trying to steal the limelight from the other players, that is the bad thing, and that should have been cracked down on. Otherwise though, we come away with, at the end of the day, you were right, but not for the reason that I thought. The lack of a session 0 was a big problem for you because you had issues with playing dark campaigns, and maybe you should have messaged the DM for that. You should have said, I'm not happy with these types of things, please completely keep them out of it, or if you want to run a game like that, I will step back. Everything kind of ended up where I think it should have done. You took the players that you wanted to play with, and you're now happier having games that you want to play in the style you want to play, and that's fine. Ultimately, I also hope that the DM and the Paladin and anyone who remained still get to run their game, because it feels like this is less of a both sides are inherently wrong, that they've done some issue. Yes, there are problems, but I think this is just two groups who have completely different eyes of how they want to run their games, and they'll be happier apart. Okay, that took a little bit longer than I would have expected, but I think it was a fun story. I think there was some interesting points in it. We'll do something else now, I think a little bit shorter. Yes, this will do. This story is kicked from a game for making an ooze character a gender. Couple of things you gotta know about me first. I am a damn pack rat when it comes to homebrew. My homebrew folder on Google Drive is probably bigger than the entire hard drive on the laptop I am writing this from. And a lot of character concepts involve homebrew therein in some capacity. Until given a reason to believe otherwise, I always assume the best of people. Now then, let the story begin. I'm scrolling through the LFG ads on a Discord server that I'm on, looking for a game to play, and I find a Gestalt game in need of players. I send in an application, get accepted, join the server, and one of the other characters, who I'll call Soft and Wet, is posting Nazi memes in general chat. I assume they're being shared as satire, and ignore the memes. I talk to the DM over private messages to say that I'd like to use some homebrew from my collection, an ooze race from Helena's Guide to Monster Hunting, and a full-blown alchemist class with an entire subclass dedicated to making oozes. Both brews get approved, and I share the backstory with the DM. He loves it, and I begin working on making my character sheet. A quick tangent, I originally made this character back in 2023 for a game that fizzled due to a DM with commitment issues, and my character did end up having a wonderful relationship with an NPC in that game before it stopped. Back to the horror story. One of the rules the DM made was it was blatantly clear and non-negotiable was that we wouldn't be exploring LGBTQ+ issues. Now, keep in mind, I honestly just assumed that meant that nobody would be subjected to homo or transphobia, that gender and sexuality wouldn't really be a factor. So you can imagine my surprise when I said that my character went by they them pronouns, and Soft and Wet responds with some variation of be ready to be referred to as that thing then, while the DM responded to me playing a gender specimen of a race that is genderless by default, by then banning me from the game server and blocking me, then sending another LFG ad in the exact same server. I responded by saying, warning for everyone interested, I got kicked from this game for making my character non-binary, with one of the other players, somebody who was planning on playing a character from Dark Souls named Milena, backing up my statement. Edit. To everyone who's saying I dodged a bullet, it's far more accurate to say I got force pushed out of the bullet's path by the shooter's small dick energy. Edit 2. Electric Boogaloo. To anyone asking where to find the class or race, the race was Oozkin from Helena's Guide to Monster Hunting, and the class was my Mage Hand Press. If you can access Reddit, you can use your preferred search engine to look them up. Looking through the comments, I'm glad that there are other people sharing my opinion on this, because this is a case of, hey, these people fucking suck, but OP, You really came in with some rose-tinted glasses here. You start the story by mentioning that someone is posting Nazi memes in the shitposting chat, and you just kind of go, well, I'm sure it's satire. I'm sure it's nothing. It's probably just for jokes. And then make a non-binary character after they've specifically banned LGBTQ+, and gone, I'm sure it's just to protect me. I have to say, I do like you, OP, because you seem very sweet and naive. This is a moment of, hey, I'm glad you got out of this, because this was not going to be a game that you were going to enjoy, and probably not enjoy being around these people. But yeah, you really kind of you went into this one not seeing what was going on around you. Unfortunately, this is just this is looking for group. Sometimes when you find certain groups in D&D, they're going to be completely different from every other group. Every group has certain types of people. Some of them are going to be kind of bad, and others are going to be just way more fun, way more to what you want. And this was a game which was nothing I would ever want to play, or people I would ever want to associate with, but they're out there. That's NFG. You go in, you make the character you want to do, and you get a feel for the landscape. You see what people are posting, you talk to the DM, and the DM seemed interested in what you were doing, because I think the concept was really cool. But at the end of the day, they couldn't get past their own bigotry, and that was it for them. Warnings aside, I do think it funny that they had issue with, again, the English language, which always seems to come up in these pronoun issues. You're playing an ooze. The ooze doesn't have a gender, it's genderless. So referring to you as they, them makes sense. So this is just another one of those cases where someone is being a bit bigoted and just doesn't understand. He, she, them, they're there to describe what you are seeing, to describe the person. You can't, calling them it is like, yeah, okay, I guess you can call them that, but like, it's just offensive. Again, this is a living creature. They want terms to be called by. It's not hard, it's not difficult. It's a thing that you do every day in conversation. So come on, as a child, if you saw someone who looked like a woman, you would call them she. If you saw someone who looked like a man, you would call them he. If you were unsure on their pronouns, you would do your best to ask for their name, or just use the pronoun that you presumed they were going by, unless they corrected you. It's perfectly natural. This isn't difficult. This story is just, it's a silly case of, this is a fantasy game, man. I don't understand how you can be totally fine with someone being a living, breathing ooze, and then go, whoa, the ooze doesn't have a gender? Get out of my game, you woke weirdo. At the end of the day, probably good that you left the warning along with the other player who was in agreement with you. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to be in that kind of game, particularly in the D&D community. That ideal of running games is just kind of outdated like that. No one really wants to just play with bigotry. And there'll be people out there who are like, oh, but I want to play in a game where the orcs are still evil and, these races are just inherently bad. And it's like, man, you can still play in those games. You can still run a game where you fight a band of evil orcs. These changes have been put in so that you don't have players who must play a drow, and that drow must be evil. They must be a villain. They can't be good. It's for more choice. You can still run games like that. At the end of the day, it's more nonsense, but I'm glad you all got out of there. I hope that you found a more interesting game, something where you could play this character again, because they do sound genuinely like a fun character, and I would love to hear how their other sessions went, whether or not they got to do more romance with that certain NPC, and how the alchemist class overall performed, really. But that'll be all for now. Those were some fairly interesting stories, completely different dynamics. Maybe the Oozkin player would have got along quite well with the player from the Open Vengeance story. It sounds like they more had a style in common. But what do you think? What do you think of the stories today? My opinion's something you agreed with? Did you completely disagree? Did you have other takes on how you would have handled these stories in these situations? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to support me, please hit like on that video, it really helps. And if you want to go even further, you can subscribe below to see future videos that I've got coming out. If you want to check out other content I'm doing, or even get these videos a day early, you can support my Patreon down below. It really helps out with everything that I'm doing, and I can't say how much I appreciate it to those who do. I'm even offering some discounts on those who are coming up as fresh members, so check that out. But I'll have to say thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all in the next video coming out sometime during the start of next week.